Ladies and gentlemen, resignation must be your last resort. You should not resign casually or without incredible thought or incredible reasons. And this game here beautifully illustrates that. This is from Bobby Fischer's 60 Memorable Games. This is game number 9. And well, we're talking about the highest level of chess. Bobby Fischer is with the black pieces here, and he reaches a position after roughly 36 moves where he wanted to resign. In fact, he wrote himself that he was planning to resign, but he decided to just wait one more move, and that slowly turned into a couple more moves, and before you know it, he managed to draw out the game, make it more complicated, and ended up drawing the position. And so I think this is a really motivating game because it shows you how even when the position looks so bad that Bobby Fischer wants to resign, there is still hope. And so let's go ahead and jump straight in. We're going to look at this through black's lens because, again, that is Bobby Fischer. And, okay, we have a Sicilian, a very aggressive Sicilian. You can see white's intentions are abundantly clear from these first moves with f4. They're going for an attack. And their idea is to castle long and basically throw these pawns at black. And this is exactly what happens. We can see a trade here, the rook centralizes, the king moves, some defensive developing moves for white, but ultimately g4, and they begin the assault on the king side. Now, one of the things here as black is you need to respond with the same level of energy. And that is, I think, where black kind of went wrong in this position. They saw they're being attacked, and Fischer decided, okay, let's play a bit more passively, defend from this attack. He went knight to d7, and then knight to b6. You know, not terrible moves, but the general plan of playing slowly and positionally here is not so effective because white is quickly pressuring you over here. What you should have done instead is possibly, you know, for example, after g5, probably gone b4 here. Right, start your own assault after knight ce2, castle, and well, white's attack is still coming, but well, maybe suddenly your attack is also. So you want to, act very aggressively in these positions, so the position does not become a very one-sided game where only white is attacking. And that is, in my opinion, what started to happen here. Black is defending, they're trying to close up the position, but white continues to create threats. A very beautiful move here, f6. The point is, if you take here, of course, they don't take. That would be a huge mistake in view of, well, pawn takes c3. Black is up a piece, but what they can play here is the really beautiful knight to d5. And if you take, it doesn't matter with what piece, they can take back and open up the attack. I mean, this is completely, terrible for black. So instead, after f6, black took, but now after bishop f8, look at how sad this position is. This king can never find safety. It cannot legally castle long, and it can't castle short because of the weaknesses now created. And so there's a real issue for black. Where do you put the king? And that really gets highlighted in these next couple of moves by white. They continue playing energetically, bringing the knight into the game. Takes, opening up the rook onto this lonely king in the center. The king moved to d8, and now check, right? Continuing to attack. You're giving away a pawn here, but doing so in a manner that opens up all of your pieces. And one of the clear things you can notice here is the disparity in piece quality. Material doesn't even matter here. Black could realistically be up a knight or, maybe a couple of pawns here. That is irrelevant because it's the quality. And this is a common message from the last video as well. These pieces are all so active. This king is so safe. White has potential. These pieces are undeveloped. The king is really not safe. So black, because of this disparity in piece quality, is much, much worse. Queen to b6 was played here. There were alternatives. For example, the engine shows queen c5 is a bit more, a bit stronger, but it's very logical why black would resist playing this. There's now this threat of kind of bringing the rook in like this. So queen to b6, supernatural. The queen comes to h5. We have king to c7, really giving away the pawn. There's no real alternative. And I mean, it's pretty clear that white is completely dominating here. You can't really blame Fischer for wanting to resign. You see the rook coming in as well. That's dangerous. You also see soon this pawn here on f7 advancing. That's also a pretty dangerous point that white has, a very big positive in white's position. And okay, black has very slight threats. For example, you can't take the pawn here. That would be a horrible mistake because of this checkmate on the back rank. but as long as white plays with really a slight amount of carefulness, they won't ever be in danger of losing this position. f7 was played. We have bishop to g7. Now the rook comes and continues pressuring, bishop f8, queen takes e5, a nice idea. And it is in fact in the next couple of moves that Fischer specifically said that he wanted to resign. h5 was played here, we take, king takes, and ladies and gentlemen, in this position after the move c3, Fischer literally said in his book that he wanted to resign here, and he was really thinking about doing so. But in these moments, yes, you're completely paralyzed in this side of the board, yes, this pawn is annoying, yes, you're down material, but the onus is still on white to convert. If white doesn't know how to convert this endgame, and this is a fairly tricky endgame, yeah, it's not a middle game where checkmate is inevitable. This is still, there's still some life in this position. I think that's what Fischer ultimately realized by playing king to c7, kept on playing on and really testing white's abilities here. Now rook to a8 was played, king d6, dropping a couple more pawns, but okay, this f7 pawn is now gone, and after the move b4, the game was adjourned here, and Fischer started, after analyzing this in the adjournment time, he began to realize maybe there is some level of hope, because even after this trade, white is up 2 pawns, they're connected, they're passed, but there is still some fear in positions like these, because the endgame with 2 bishops of opposite color is notoriously known for being drawish, and that is kind of what, again, Fischer begins to realize. So he tries to activate his pieces, he does so in a very effective manner. We eventually have the trade of the rooks, and we enter the complete endgame phase. Now, I need to be very clear and very open. This is winning for white, right? There's no way to avoid it. You know, I've said that these are kind of drawish tendencies. You know, black tried to get some hope, sure, but you're down 2 pawns, and these pawns are dangerous. If white plays like a computer here, there is no hope and no salvation for black. However, that's exactly it. White is not a computer. They are a human being, and they're susceptible to various different mistakes, and this is the point in these tricky endgames, which are objectively super winning, but practically not the easiest to win. So h4 was played here. The pawn now on a dark square can never be attacked. White begins to launch the pawns, and they already make a pretty serious inaccuracy, a4. Winning is b4, and I'll show you the line. King to c7, king to b8, but ultimately, all that white does is push this pawn. Push, push, move the king as much as you can, and then use the zugzwang, the fact that now this bishop has to return, to then push the a pawn, because the king cannot come to a8. And if the king comes here, well, then we can continue infiltrating with our own king. So this is one of the ways that white could have won. They planned a4, and the reason this doesn't work is because it's generally going to be a bit slower for these pawns to push, and they're also pushing in a way where they're next to each other at all times, and that does allow for some tactical ideas. And here's the main idea that black has. If they could orchestrate a situation where they can sacrifice their bishop for these 2 pawns, well, then it's not clear that would be winning, especially because after the king takes this pawn, that endgame is a draw if the king can reach h7 or h8, because of the fact that this bishop is on a light square, not on a dark square. So this is one of the ideas that Fischer was playing for. I can actually show this idea. We'll illustrate this. So this is the game continuation, but just to show the point, suppose that in this position, king a3 was played. Obviously a terrible move because, well, you blunder the pawn, but if this pawn was somehow defended and the bishop has to come to e3, this is still a draw after this sacrifice. And this is what I was saying, because after the king starts marching up and taking this pawn, this king simply runs to h8 or h7, and it's a draw. So that's one of the ideas for black. And aside from that, they simply juggle the bishop around, keeping pressure as much as they can. And eventually, white realized they can't make any more progress, and here they actually drew the game. In fact, in this position, they agreed on a draw, and because of the fact that after b7, the simple bishop to g3 defends the promotion square, defends the pawn, and there's nothing left to discuss. You can never really go a6, because this king can come back and start putting pressure. And aside from that, I mean, black will keep the bishop on this diagonal, keep the king on this square, just rotate the bishop realistically, and there's no progress that can be made effectively in this position. So the main takeaway from this game is really more psychological in my opinion, which is you shouldn't resign, especially if there's still some potential for play, if there's still some complications, and more or less if the opponent still has to prove some advantage. If they have to convert an endgame with 2 bishops of opposite color, that is not an easy task, even if it's objectively winning. So force your opponent to prove that they know how to win it. Thank you for watching. Subscribe if you're new around here. Like this video if you learned something new from it, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace out.